This is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station and listen. It's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, thanks for joining me this Thursday, February 6th. The State Journal-Register, the newspaper of record for downstate Illinois and usually all things Springfield, they have, about a half an hour ago, published that Virginia Hallis McCaskey has died. They said that the Bears just announced it a little while ago. Virginia Hallis McCaskey was 102. 102. She was the oldest child of the gentleman who founded the Chicago Bears, George Hallis. She inherited the team in 1979 when her brother died. And one of the many NFL commissioners, Paul Tagliabue, once referred to Virginia McCaskey as the First Lady of the National Football League. Virginia Hallis McCaskey has passed away, according to the Chicago Bears, at the age of 102. I'm sure that we will hear more about whatever the family is going to do for a memorial in the coming days. So let's go back to politics. As predicted, as expected, as hoped, judges are starting to really weigh in and stop some of the most egregious of Donald Trump's moves. There was a judge who placed on indefinite stay Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. You know, that one where he thought that with a sweep of his pen, he could rewrite the U.S. Constitution. It went to court. Judge said, you know what? No, just no. No, 1,000 times no. And so not only did he stay that executive order, but it is an indefinite stay. Judges also weighing in on this, these alleged buyouts. Hey, you're a federal worker. Resign by Friday, and you'll get a buyout. We will pay you through September. And within hours, labor lawyers were saying, don't do it. Don't sign it. Don't sign anything. It's not worth the paper it's not written on, because apparently this was sent out like with an email. Hey, everybody, just quit. Trust us. Just quit and trust us that we'll pay you, because Donald Trump has such a reputation as being somebody who can be counted on to pay his bills. And anywho, as she says, repeating herself, a judge has now said, you know what? At the very least, we're going to move back the date. No, the deadline is not going to be tomorrow for this alleged offer, which we're not even sure is an offer. So there is no, because everybody was like, ooh, you only have 24 hours. You have to decide. You know, quite simply, just no. There is going to be a lot of stuff happening that we don't like. There are going to be people doing workarounds. There is a newsletter called The Skim, SKIMM. It's written like as kind of a snarky, here's the news of the day. It's designed for a younger demographic, founded by two women, and it has a real sort of woman-centric focus, though it is, you know, the news of the day is, of course, just the news of the day. The two founders of The Skim recently announced and they actually posted a video where they both talk about this. All of the information about all the abortion information, all the reproductive rights information that's usually found on the government website has been scrubbed, along with a lot of other stuff, but that's just part of it. And before that happened, they downloaded it. They copied it. Stuff like just medical advice. If you're thinking about terminating a pregnancy, these are the things you need to know. These are the kinds of people you need to talk about. This is what you need to do. Along with other women's oriented health information, all the information that was listed on reproductive rights, they now have downloaded and are making it available. So there are people out there who are trying to get around and compensate for what they saw coming and what is coming. And there are judges. Donald Trump, most presidents write a few executive orders, but the expectation has always been that before they write an executive order, they will actually talk to somebody with legal knowledge and find out whether or not what they want to write in this executive order is legal. What a concept. Donald Trump doesn't care about that. He wants to make news. Even if there's something he wants that is illegal, he will write the executive order. Because even if, like with the birthright citizenship, even if it gets struck down by the courts, put on hold, indefinite stay, no, I'm sorry, this job offer thing, whatever it is, you can't just tell them by Friday. Ixnay. Because it's a win-win for him. If nobody challenges the executive order, he gets to have whatever it is he wanted. And if it is challenged in court and it is stopped, then he can turn to his base and say, like, well, I tried. It was this whole deep state working against me. Not, oh, I knew I never could do that because I knew it was illegal and I knew it would never go anywhere. No, Donald Trump's not going to say that. His is, well, I tried. The deep state thwarted me. Rats, that deep state, thwarting my every whim. And I don't know about you, but I almost gagged at the top of the hour. One of the things Donald Trump's going to do is say and do outrageous things to distract the media from what he doesn't want them focused on. And he's going to say and do outrageous things that are solely designed for his base, the worst of his base. That's what's going forward. And did you hear at the top of the hour? I've always believed in God, but now I don't know. My relationship with God has just changed since the assassination attempt. Maybe. Did you notice when he took the oath of office this time around, he didn't put his hand on the Bible? I think he was worried that lightning would strike him. Or maybe he was just mad that it wasn't one of those made in China Bibles that he sells. I don't know. Yeah, he's so much more Christian than he used to be. Isn't he? And, I'm going to create a task force to root out anti-Christian bias in the federal government. I wonder what he means by that. He could mean nothing at all. It could just be words that he likes, because he likes to put words together. Battery, shark, boat. It could mean nothing. Or it could mean, we have something called separation of church and state, which means that no matter what religion you subscribe to or none at all, when it comes to the laws, that is not supposed to be taken into consideration. We don't have Muslim-based laws or Jewish-based laws or Christian-based laws. We have laws. And hopefully those laws are based in a moral good that I'd like to think was reflected in all three of those religions. So I guess you could say they influence us in that respect. But if he's going to do this task force to root out anti-Christian bias, what exactly does that mean? Because I don't trust Donald Trump. Is that just meaningless drivel, the kind that frequently comes out of his mouth? It might be. Or is it a way to somehow not only, as we are with, let's eliminate DEI, which means let's not hire any more black people or brown people or women. Is it a way of saying, we're going to make sure that those Muslims and those Jews and those Baha'i and those other people, aren't getting any kind of advantage. We are going to elevate Christianity to be the sort of the top of the pyramid as opposed to all things being equal. I don't trust him. Do you trust him? You shouldn't if you do. Because he's a lying liar who lies. For those of you who haven't figured that out yet. And that's not just me saying that. That's, like that Venezuelan woman, Adelis Ferro, who I played for you earlier in the week. The Venezuelans, like, the Ukrainians Chicago took in, the Venezuelans came the same way. Documented. They did what Republicans are always complaining about. We don't want these people who don't do it legally. Venezuelans did it legally. 350,000 Venezuelans showed up in this country through the legal immigration process. They were offered temporary protected status while their paperwork was all going through the system. TPS is the shorthand for that program. Donald Trump ended it. And this woman from South Florida who represents her Venezuelan community was like, they lied to us. They told us we would be protected. Republicans told us we would be safe. They lied to us. They lied to us. We are betrayed. Yeah, get used to that kind of a soundbite. Well, but he promised he wouldn't come after X, Y, or Z. Government efficiency? Well, I thought they were just going to get rid of waste. I didn't think that they were going to get rid of this program that my family depends on. Somebody quoted Stephen Colbert, who said that he thinks a lot of Americans forgot how much they disliked Donald Trump. They forgot all of the stuff that he did. And they are now in the process of remembering. I think that sums it up beautifully. I think there are going to be a lot of people who are, wait, what? You mean he lied? He didn't even know what Project 2025 is, and yet his administration is implementing it page by page by page. Okay. I've been trying to rein myself in. There's always lots of stuff, as you know, that I want to talk about, and it takes me a while sometimes to get to the phone line. So let me just play one little thing. Lady B is going to open up the phone line, 763-763-9278. 773-763 WCPT if you want to look at the letters instead of the numbers. Give us a call. I've already got a bunch of texts. But, Illinois congressperson who represents the 4th District, Jesus Chuy Garcia, he was at a press conference this morning that the Progressive Caucus held, and he had some thoughts about Elon Musk. This is Illinois Congressperson Chuy Garcia. Listen to this.
Elon Musk is not fooling us. He has an ulterior motive for going against these agencies. He's trying to hide the abuses he's committed within his own companies. So there's a personal vendetta side to all of this. And he's been a bad boss, and not just at Twitter, but also at SpaceX. Workers have filed complaints, and he's got several lawsuits for the terrible working conditions, including denying mandated rest periods and overtime threats to organize. That's why he's targeting the Department of Labor, and he wants to conceal and obstruct the National Labor Relations Board's investigations. Then there's Tesla. Musk has 7 complaints under the NLRB for unfair labor practices that affect more than 140,000 employees. And it's the NLRB investigations. If they're not enough, Musk is also on the hook with OSHA and for the death of a Tesla factory worker in Austin, Texas. The record is clear. Elon Musk is anti-worker and anti-labor. We will not allow the shadow government that Musk is leading to destroy government agencies that protect workers. Elon Musk, we've got a message for you. You will be fired. People across all the states and capitals throughout the country are rising up and saying that we cannot have an unelected, someone who has not been vetted, someone who has not taken an oath to protect the interests of the people of the United States.
Can you kick somebody out of office when they haven't been elected to office? Is a puzzlement. How do we fire somebody who's never been hired officially? We'll have to think about that one. Okay, let's go to the phone lines right now. Lynn from Gurnee is on the line. Hi, Lynn. Thanks for the call today.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
I guess I want to talk about the Medicaid and how many more programs are involved in it than people realize, and why people that get Medicaid waiver services for their family think it's not going to happen to them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to so many parents that are like, well, that's not us. It's not adults with developmental disabilities. My son is in a day program and a housing program, 100% funded from Medicaid waivers. And people need to wake up and realize, it is going to happen to you.
Well,
percentage.
This is what drives me insane. Republicans, we're just going to cut waste. Well, you need, when you go to the town hall where your Republican elected official is there, ask them, tell them 3 things that they have identified as waste. Because, you think it's going to be, they don't need, 20 workers in this office. They can get by with 17. Look, that's waste right there. But that's not what they do. They look at social programs. In part, and I'm afraid this is particularly cruel, in part because they think those are the people who don't know how to fight back. We will get rid of the programs designed for kids, for poor people, because you know what? They won't even know until the checks stop coming, and by then it'll be too late. And that's how they create the money in the budget to cover the tax breaks they want to continue for the wealthiest people in the country. It's not coming out of waste. It's not downsizing. It's not being more efficient, because we would all sign on to that if that were the case. It's one of those pesky social programs. Why, you know what? Your son is in an adult program. Well, that's fine. He can continue, but maybe you should just pay for it yourself.
Well, Illinois gets reimbursed 50%. Every Medicaid expense, 50% comes from the federal government, and it can go, based on the state's need, up to 77%. Wisconsin is 60%. If they cut all those down to 50%, which is the minimum, a 10% cut is huge money, and it's not just your kid, my kid. It's going to be everybody's going to feel a piece of that. And so, even though they're not plucking out these individual things, they're not all mandatory. It's their choice if they want to do home-based services and all the things. There's ones that are mandatory. There's ones that aren't. They can choose at the state level what they want to use that money for. And the parents and the guardians and the people that voted the wrong way in their own best interest, I just don't understand.
I don't understand either. And I think it falls back on they're listening to what they're being told.
Oh, yeah.
But we've been down this road before. These promises have been made before. So look at what they're doing, not what they're saying. That's Donald Trump is famous for that.
Yeah.
I'm doing this. I'm doing this.
List.
Well, no, you're not.
Yeah, there's a long waiting list in Illinois. People have to come up on a lottery system for any service for adults with disabilities, and then it's not even enough to, let the parent go to a job. Mm-hmm. So, it was already way underfunded. So any cut now is definitely going to be detrimental. And, we've been a big part of making phone calls and going to town halls, and people have to stand up and make some phone calls and get active.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely, you are preaching to the choir. And for those of you, I say this on an almost daily basis, but it is really, really ridiculously easy to find out who your state rep, your state senator, your congressperson, and your senators are. I say that not just for Illinois, because our radio signal reaches 4 different states. There's Google. Get on your computer, and in the little box that has the little magnifying glass, what are you searching for? Who are my state reps? Who's my state senator? Here's my zip code.
There's hotlines. There's one number for Medicaid, and it's in D.C. You dial this one number, 866-426-2631. You put in your zip code, boom, takes you straight to your who's in charge of your area. I mean, people, it's easy to say after it's done, I tried. I mean, people need to try now because once it's on there, it's in the bill. It's a done thing.
Lynn, I've heard some callers say, like recently they've been trying to call Dick Durbin or Tammy Duckworth and they get a busy signal or they get a voicemail and they're told the voicemail is full. If every politician, I've not found one yet that does not have their own dedicated website. I promise you, your state rep has one, your state senator has one, your congressperson has a website. And if you can't get through on the phone and can't have your voice heard that way, go to their website. I promise you there is somewhere on that website, there's a contact us. Contact or contact us or contact me button.
And you can write your whole thing in there.
And there's usually a form. Do you want to email this legislator? Fill out this form and tell us, what's your concern? It's really easy to do. You can do all of it sitting down, which at my age, Lynn, is a real plus. And we've got to do it. It isn't just, I love especially in cold Chicago weather, I love the fact that 1,000 people showed up at the Federal Plaza on Wednesday. But sometimes because of the weather or because of your physical situation or because of your family or job responsibilities, you're not going to be able to attend maybe the protests and rallies you'd like to be at. So get your telephone warmed up. Get your computer warmed up because you can do a lot of activism just like that. Oops,
absolutely.
Lynn, I got to go to a break. I've been chatting too much. Thank you for the call. We are going to take more calls when we come right back after this.
Hey Progressives, it's Richard Chu, host of Chu's Views, weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. here on WCPT. I want to let you know that one of our leading progressive voices, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, will be my guest the first Friday of each month at 7:30 a.m.
There are so many people who want to understand how decisions are made, and there are many people who want to know that they are included in those decisions.
Mayor Brandon Johnson, the first Friday of every month on Chu's Views here on WCPT.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 a.m., WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Want to join the conversation?
I just wanted to thank your station for consistently reporting the facts.
In a world of clickbait headlines, your station is who I trust for the real news.
Call Joan now at 773-763-9278 and join the conversation. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820.
I mentioned that Minority Leader in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, put out a 10-point plan for how Democrats are going to resist and thwart Donald Trump. Number 10 on that plan was a mandate. Hakeem Jeffries told the Democratic members of Congress that they must meet with their constituents in the next week. It has to happen now. They have to talk to the people in their districts. Somebody just texted in that she got an invite last night to a phone town hall that Illinois Congressman Sean Casten has scheduled. And I believe, I have not seen anything on the Sean Casten website, but this texter said that this phone town hall is tonight. So find out, what is your congressperson doing? When are they going to be meeting with you, whether it's by Zoom, whether it's by phone, whether it's in person, whether it's all of the above or none of the above or some other medium? They are all supposed to be reaching out. Do you know what district you live in? Jan Schakowsky, Mike Quigley, Bill Foster, Brad Schneider. Any of those ring a bell? Look it up. By the way, like I said, I couldn't confirm on his website the phone town hall, but I have no reason to believe that this texter is wrong. They say they got an invite last night. So maybe you have to be signed up to Sean Casten's email list, which you can very easily do from his website. And if there is a phone town hall tonight and you are a part of it, I would love for you to call in tomorrow and tell us what it was like and what was discussed and what people had to say. By the way, for those of you who are in Sean Casten's district and might be phoning in, Matt Cummings from our station sent me this clip of Sean Casten. Oh, you've got a firecracker. You're lucky if you live in his district. Was speaking in Congress. You know how I always talk about how I love Senator Chris Murphy because he's all fiery? I think I'm going to add my love list. I'm going to add a name to my love list, and Sean Casten is on there now. I want to share with you, but we're going to go back to the phone lines. But first, I want to share with you remarks that potentially your congressperson made on the House floor recently. I think you'll enjoy this. Listen to this.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, step right up and prepare to be amazed. This is an ordinary folder. As you can see, no hidden compartments, and yet inside, it's an invisible rabbit. If you like that trick, you are going to love Donald Trump's national energy emergency. It's also totally imaginary, but as any good carnival barker will tell you, there's a sucker born every minute who falls for the shtick. Let's review the numbers. Under the Biden administration, U.S. created 16 million jobs, had the fastest growing economy in the OECD, held oil demand flat, drastically cut coal use, embraced cleaner, cheaper renewables and efficiency. We decoupled economic growth from fossil fuel, giving American people more heat, more light, more power, more money. That put downward pressure on domestic oil and gas prices, which caused domestic fossil producers to export into less developed, more remunerative overseas markets. Now, before you say there's no emergency here, consider this from the perspective of our poor oil and gas producers. They're losing market share. They're making less money, but they got an ally in Donald Trump. After all, he's the guy who forced the Saudis to curtail production in 2020 to drive up oil prices and oil industry profits. That's right. He made sure U.S. consumers paid more for gasoline. Ta-da! Don't be a sucker, but if you are, I am available for parties and I can solve all your invisible rabbit problems. You can keep hopping, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
You got to love that. By the way, somebody else just texted in that they participated in the Sean Casten town hall, even though I was told it was tonight. Apparently, the one they participated in was today at noon. So I don't know if that means that was it. I don't know if that means he's doing a daytime one and a nighttime one. Any of those things are possible. I participated in the Sean Casten town hall. It was today at noon. It was very good. He is smart. Yes, he is. I asked that person if they could respond with more information about what some of the voters, the participants, said or asked of Congressman Casten. So I will let you know if I get a response from them. In the meantime, let's go to the phone lines. Our good friend Roosevelt is on the line. Hey, Roosevelt.
Joe, thank you for taking my call. Appreciate it. I want to tell you that I passed along the 5calls.org this morning. So people are getting informed. People are getting involved. People are excited. And I brought up the fact that where are those Cubans that came the same way that the Venezuelans came to this country, and they're not standing up for them? In particular, Ileana Ross, Leighton, Marco Rubio, come to think of it, and all those people that are, when Obama was there, they blew their heads off because Obama went to Cuba with the Pope and all that, and he sat down with Raul Castro. And now you don't hear anything, a peep out of them for standing up for their fellow Venezuelans, not fellow Venezuelans, but their fellow refugees that they came the same way, what you mentioned.
We saw, Roosevelt, I saw the same thing in Trump's first go-round in the White House. Because remember, he was going after immigrants then. And at the time, one of my partner Ray's really good friends was somebody who immigrated from South America, from Argentina. And he was a Trump supporter. And Ray used to say to him, don't you understand? This guy wants to get rid of you. And his response was the same thing that those Venezuelans told one another before the election. I'm a good immigrant. He's not going to come after me. He's only going to go after the bad immigrants. I don't understand how we have, in the relatively short space of time, completely forgotten how awful a human being and how terrible a leader Donald Trump is.
You know what? They're very convincing, these Cuban Americans, that particularly in Dade County. And I want to thank you for that lady that you said, that activist, because I researched the whole thing and I found the video. I believe it's 2.5 minutes long. And Maria Elvira Salazar, I want to thank you for that one, because remember that woman? She's a congresswoman. She's from Dade County, and she took credit for $60 million that the infrastructure Biden sent downstairs to her, and she was on, and there was a guy, I can't remember you gave the name of that guy, and I researched that video, and I had that video somewhere, but I couldn't find it. So she's another snake in the grass down there. So they're very convincing, when it comes down to getting the votes to their fellow Latinos. But then they know that Trump, that's the worst of it. They know that Trump was going to go back on their word. It was nothing new to them, but they tricked them, like that lady said. But she's no different than even my own community, Mexican Americans. They were, convinced that he was only going to go after the criminals.
I know. And I understand that's what he said. And I understand that he wanted their votes, and so he was not going to tell them, anything different than that. But it didn't, the part that makes me sad, Roosevelt, is that it really didn't take too much effort to scratch the surface of that. Tom Homan, the guy who was the guy in his first administration behind the separation of families, tearing kids away from their parents, that guy was interviewed on 60 Minutes, which is, I believe, still the most watched news program in the world. And Tom Homan said, he was asked, if Trump is reelected, will you reinstate that policy? And he said, if Trump is reelected, he said, anything and everything is on the table. And she said, including family separation. And he said, yes. It doesn't take too much effort to really to really find out that these guys are lying to you. And it makes me sad that people who feel that they have enough status, enough invested in the game to vote for president, don't do even the tiniest amount of homework. They really, really don't. If you or anybody listening to this, I'm glad that you're here and that you're part of my audience, but I should not be the only source of information in your life. I myself, partly because of what I do, I look to more than a dozen different sources of information every day. I'm not expecting you, those of you in the audience, to do that, but you cannot rely on one source of information. Even if, you love Rachel Maddow, you don't pay any attention to politics, and you listen to Rachel Maddow's show every night. That's good, but it's not enough. It's not enough. You need to find, if you're in a state that has a Courier newsroom, sign up for the email. Most of Courier stuff isn't political. It's like the 10 best places to pick apples this weekend. What are the 5 best hot chocolates, in the area? It's a fun newsletter, but it will, if there's something important going on politically, they will mention that as well. I beg everyone to convince their friends, their families, their children not to rely on one source of information entirely, because I guarantee you there's stuff you're missing if that's what you're doing. Roosevelt, I have talked too long. We need to get to a break. Thank you for the call, my friend. We are going to get back to those phone lines, and I promise I will be less chatty after this.
Podcasts of Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Amazon. Just search for Joan Esposito.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We are going to be taking your calls up until 3 o'clock today. Let me get back to the phone lines right now. And let's see. Let's go to Lake in the Hills. Our good friend Greg is on the line. Hi, Greg.
Good afternoon, Joan. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
I had one issue to begin with. I got 2 real quick ones. First one's based upon the bottom of the hour break, and you're talking about the 20-year anniversary, I believe it was,
of WCPT. Yeah.
Yeah. And my thought on that was, first of all, congratulations. I've been a listener all that time. And then the other part of that is, has anybody ever thought about contacting Mark Cuban to ask for help in supporting the station and or purchasing WGN? So that you have the flamethrowers, they always call it, the big wattage units, so you can broadcast out across the country at certain times. To me, it's. I
think those are both great ideas.
To me, there's a guy who's a billionaire. He doesn't. I did try contacting him on, both my behalf and yours, but mostly for WCPT. I sent you the number too, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. The second thing is, and that's the one you played, what's his name, the representative from Illinois?
Sean Casten.
You said you love him
Chewy
now?
Garcia. I played both of them.
Was that great? The one about the Barker?
Yes, that was Sean Casten.
Yeah, Sean Casten. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was fantastic. I love when you hear someone that's like almost historical speech, going down with like the Lincoln Douglas type things.
Yeah.
But the main reason of my call, and I'll make it real quick, you probably recall that I have contacted you in the past about Oath.
Yes.
And the reason I'm calling you today is a little different because after the disappointment in spending, donating $1,700 or whatever dollars through Oath, I wrote to them and expressed my dismay in their approach. And I mentioned one of the reasons is Citizens United. And I said that really organizations like theirs and Act Blue are basically living off of that generosity of Citizens Blue decision. And, it's like I said, that really you guys this makes you guys have a reason to be. And I says, to me, it's self-defeating. And then I sent him a copy of the YouTube video from the Midas Touch group that explained why Kamala Harris lost, which was the making sure that the voters were suppressed all throughout the United States, especially in the swing states. And he wrote back to me after that email that I sent him. I've been in constant contact with him because I've always had ideas that I think he could have done better, and I tried to get them to contact you, and they said they did and all this kind of stuff, so they get them on the air. But he says, as a general note, I would not trust information from Midas Touch. And
interesting. Why?
I don't know why, and I got to ask them why. But,
well, they're not... They're influencers. They're not like a vetted legacy media organization. And if you're not familiar with Midas Touch, there are a lot of people who call themselves, journalists or purveyors of information on the interwebs who are unreliable. A lot of people aren't familiar with a lot of them, and maybe he's not all that familiar with Midas Touch. Midas Touch is very pro-democracy. They're very progressive. So you have to, when you're on a site like that, you have to understand where they're coming from. And maybe you won't always agree. I subscribe to Charlie Sykes' Substack. I mean, the former very conservative radio host from Wisconsin. And I know I'm not always going to agree with everything he says, but I know where he's coming from. So maybe, it's easy to say, trust the Washington Post. That's a no-brainer, but some of these newer sites that may not be as familiar to everybody, I think it's not a bad warning to do your own homework.
Oh, and I do. I mean, I watch several of these things. I wouldn't say I'm at the same level of you because I really respect what you do, and you have insights that I would never have. But I've been following politics for many, many years before it was fashionable because I learned my lesson, and I'll be honest with everybody out there, and I hate myself, at least this part of myself. I voted for Ronald Reagan once, and I'll never forgive myself for doing that. And it used to be back in those days when I used to say, people like, for example, Governor Edgar. I voted for him too. But then I found out he's just like all the rest
Chuck
of them.
Percy. Do you remember Republican Illinois Senator Chuck Percy? Those people would not, if Chuck Percy were alive today, he would not recognize his party. It is not the party that Chuck Percy was a part of in no way, shape, or form. Listen, I've got to move on, Greg, but thank you so much for the call.
Thank you very much. I love your show as always.
Thank you. Ken is on the line from Indiana. Hey, Ken, how are you?
Hey, good. I wanted to say you don't understand how important you are just as a voice, but as a female voice. And we need that in radio. And there's only a handful that I could think of that are that important. And so I want to thank you for that.
Well, you're very welcome. We do our best.
And you're easy on the eyes, but...
I have a face for radio.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but no, you're very attractive. That guy that he was released, one of the first ones that got he was killed, he was headed to an area called Jasper County, which is Trump land. So my guess is that he was going out there to get a weapon because a lot of these motorcycle gangs are moving out to these smaller little towns, and they're having issues with that in Indiana now. He's from Hobart, which is about a half hour from me. So that was my guess when he got stopped by that. The police pulled him over. My brother-in-law works for the sheriff's department out there. So that's my guess because that's where he's trying to pick it up, either that or drugs. But it's infuriating that he would release someone into my community like that. That's dangerous. The other thing I want to say real quick was I went to call my congressman, and the African-American woman answered the phone, and I was asking her what the congressman was planning to do with what's going on in Washington. She said, what are you talking about? And I said, this is right after Elon Musk did his thing. She had no idea what I was talking about. So I said to talk to her It's Frank Miravan, I think is how you pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
So she's supposed to tell me I'm going to call back. Then I had to go to Social Security to check on my account because I didn't know if they're going to withhold it. And then the girl behind the counter again, African-American woman, I said, leaned in and I said, what are you guys going to do about whatever? And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, you don't know what happened in the Capitol? And she's like, no. And I said, they went into the Treasury and she said, I haven't heard anything. And I'm like, how are these people not understanding,
Well,
like her job's on the chopping
I do want to interject here, Ken. I think that what you ran up against is more common than not. And I don't really think I think had that been a white person or an Asian person, that you would have run into something very similar, because most people, even people with government jobs, most people don't want to pay attention. They don't want to know what's going on in Washington. That's why I've said repeatedly that the tide will turn against Donald Trump when the pain he is inflicting trickles down to those people you're talking about. When that worker that's the Social Security office finds out that she's being fired or laid off, then she's going to know, and then she's going to pay attention. But sadly, Ken, that's more common than not, that people really only sit up and take notice when something happens that actually affects them, their kids, their spouses, their families, their jobs. Then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? That's the norm, not people like you and me.
I'm a senior citizen in rural Indiana. How do I know what's going on? And they don't even know what's going on in Washington, D.C. I know that they were gone for a while, but it's just, I don't get it. Where there's no 5-alarm fire. It seems like they don't really, not that they don't care, but it's, what are they going to do? We have to have a game plan. They've had 4 years to prepare for this. 4. And what have they done? Nothing. They should have had a war room. They said, okay, he's going to do this, he's going to do that, because it's all.
I agree with you. I think there was some preparation, but I don't think it was nearly enough. Ken, I got to get to the next caller, but thank you so much for calling. Appreciate it.
Can I add one thing real quick?
Real quick.
When I vote every time on the ballot, the Republicans are always at the top. And that's one way of cheating. Instead of, Democrats are second and independents are third. And I've called the election board about it, and they said, it's supposed to flip back and forth, but it hasn't. So
and that, again, reflects people who don't do their homework. They want something easy. It's always been known on ballots that if you are in the very top spot or the very bottom spot, those are the most advantageous spots, and that just breaks my heart. But Ken, thank you for that. Let's go to Park Ridge, Illinois right now. Steve is on the line from Park Ridge. Hey, Steve. Okay, let's go. Then we'll go to Jim from Chicago. Thanks, Lady B.
Hi, Joan. The shining example of Christianity in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
It conjures up two people I can think of. David Koresh, who brought his followers to a fiery death, and David Jones, Jimmy Jones, who poisoned his parishioners.
Yeah.
And think about the approach to the sensitive diplomatic approach to the Palestinians. Level the place, make a playground out of it. And the other one is, he dips into the same breath, saying that we spent money hand over fist for Ukraine. What about those precious minerals they have stashed there?
Yep.
Can't we get our hands on those? I can guarantee you that
Putin, it's already been reported that Donald Trump has supposedly, where did I read that? Was that the Washington Post? I'm not sure. Donald Trump basically said to Zelensky, you've got those great minerals we'd love to have. I will give you tons of dough if those minerals come our way. But we'll see, because Vladimir Putin isn't going to be happy about that. So we'll make, Vlad might call Donald up and say, back off, buddy. So who knows?
Yeah, but it's another blackmail scheme. He did it.
Exactly. It's just like, I know I'm going to send you this money as soon as you go public and say that you're investigating Joe Biden. Then all this money will come your way. Yeah, he's a mob boss.
Yeah, when you're criminally insane, Joe, blackmail is like walking through the park. I mean, you're not. There is no crime that you won't stoop to. Yep. But anyway, this ridiculous Christianity and these people that follow them to the grave is just astounding. Anyway, Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for the call. And by the way, that Sean Casten town hall was at noon today. Somebody said they thought there was going to be another one tonight. I don't have any information about that. And here's what I got via text from somebody who was on it. Most of the callers to Sean Casten's town hall today were concerned and upset about Trump and Musk and their horrible agenda. Unfortunately, there were also two callers, one man and one woman, who spoke in strong support of Trump and what he's doing. They complained about government waste and that the United States needs to stop paying for the rest of the world, etc. Mr. Casten stayed calm, but yet forceful. He emphasized that regardless of viewpoints, the president and his people absolutely cannot do these unconstitutional and undemocracy actions. He said that he and others in Congress will attempt to do all they can to fight this and will try to get bipartisan support. He also encouraged his constituents to call his office with specific concerns or ideas. That whole thing about we don't need to pay for other countries, the money that USAID distributes is for helping people who are starving, helping people who are sick with medicines and vaccines. And that, my friends, aside from the fact that if you're a Christian, you should be all on board with that, that's called soft power. When you contribute money to the people of a country, and then that country down the road has to decide what side they're going to be on, yours or somebody else's, which side do you think they're going to pick? Why do you think China is pouring millions of dollars into Africa? Because they want those countries on their side. That, my friends, is soft power. And that's what that money that we send to the rest of the world accomplishes. It makes us stronger. It makes us more powerful. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
You're the only voice of reason on the radio.
You give me hope.
Having listened to you every day.
Thank you for your insight.
Always felt a little bit smarter.
I listen to you every single day. I keep coming back to this station, and thank you for what you do.
On WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's Progressive Talk from TuneIn.
Time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Very pleased to welcome back to our airwaves Michael Kelly, professor of law at Creighton University in Omaha. Michael, how are you?
I'm good, Joan. How are things up there in Chicago?
Things are crazy in Chicago. I don't know if you saw, but apparently our mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, has accepted an invitation that was extended to him by Republicans to come testify in Washington and explain to them what it means to be a sanctuary city. So that should be interesting.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
I don't know whether I admire him for that or whether I want to just shake him. I don't know. He's a pretty good speaker, so hopefully it will go well. Hopefully.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what posture he strikes. We've been watching, of course, the governor of California make nice with Trump recently, rather surprisingly. I understand he's got to get federal aid to rebuild Los Angeles, but my goodness, Gavin Newsom, he was kind of a pit bull on Trump for a while.
Though I actually saw the same thing you did, and somebody said to me, did you hear how he dissed Trump? And I was like, that's not what I saw. I said I saw them shaking hands, and they said, well, he did an interview after that where he was apparently critical of Trump. And I didn't see that. I still haven't seen that. And, it must be, it's like being CEO of a big company. We are reviling Zuckerberg and Bezos for going down to Mar-a-Lago and trying to get on Trump's good side. But I wonder if the stockholders of Blue Origin feel that way, or if they're
exactly.
like, well, you know what, we need some serious government contracts here if we're going to keep this space effort afloat. So you better get down there and kiss the ring. I don't know.
Well, and I don't know how much of that. I mean, part of it is the Democrats obviously are still reeling. They haven't come up yet with a coherent message to actually be the loyal opposition.
I think just seeing all of the uproar literally in the last 2 or 3 days, I think that they are. I think they're waking up, Michael. I think that they're realizing that this whole idea of business as usual ain't gonna cut it.
Right. No, that's right. And that's one of the reasons I would have preferred to see your former mayor take over the DNC. I mean, now's the time for someone like Rahm Emanuel, who has no problem shivving someone in an alley to, to go up against the Republicans. I don't know who this guy from Minnesota is that they have
Ken
now,
Martin,
but now's not the time for a nice guy.
Well, by all accounts, I don't know much about Ken Martin either. I tried to get him on the show, and instead they offered us like a Ken Martin surrogate, a guy from New York State who had originally been in the running to be head of the DNC, but withdrew and endorsed Ken. And he seems to think that Ken's the guy, that Ken has made incredible inroads into Republican territory in Minnesota, and that he can bring that same success to the national stage. And speaking of Rahm, I want to ask you something. Yeah. Rahm has said that he still wants to be involved in public life, whether that's, being part of some philanthropy effort or whether it's being back in government in some respect. And I know that sometimes the people who are closest to you, what does that say? And you won't. No one respects a prophet in their own land.
That's right.
But here in Illinois, a lot of people believe that while he might be appointed to something, or maybe he will successfully head some sort of political organization or charity or something, they think that his elected political life is over for the fact that he sat on the Laquan McDonald shooting video for a year so he could get reelected and not have to deal with it. And then when it did surface, this micromanager of a mayor tried to convince everyone that our then police chief, Gary McCarthy, had somehow kept all of this from him. And there are a lot of progressive activists. There are a lot of people in the African-American community who are never going to forgive and never going to forget that. What do you think?
Well, that's true. And then he packed his bags and went to Japan. Mm-hmm. So I don't know where he is. Probably someplace back in the U.S. eating sushi. It's a habit, I'm sure now.
But the Wall Street Journal, which, as you know, is an interesting publication. When he was over there, like when he was about a year or so into his tenure as ambassador to Japan, they wrote this article where it was like, that's a society that respects tradition, a society where you are expected to be unfailingly polite and moderated, and that they were having a little bit of an adjustment problem with Rahm Emanuel's style of interacting and even speaking. Right. But he said, apparently one thing Rahm did was he made a bunch of connections, like with U.S. universities and research they were doing, and was able to expand some of those programs into Japan. bottom line, Rahm was good at making connections and bringing money into Japan, whether it was being a part of a research effort or all these other things that were going on. So the Wall Street Journal article kind of concluded he's not culturally someone that they would have embraced, but they're not going to say anything because of all the connections and all the money he's bringing to the country. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, that's his reputation. He delivers, right? And that was, why Obama relied upon him so much as chief of staff in the first term, and he did deliver. And he did deliver for Chicago too. He did some, things that maybe some people find unforgivable, probably rightly so. And maybe that'll keep him out of elected life. But when we look across the Democratic landscape right now at who has survived, the Trump onslaught or who we've got in our corner, there just aren't very many street fighters left.
Exactly.
And
that's why I've been playing a lot of sound from Chris Murphy, Senator Chris Murphy.
Yeah.
Because for weeks he's been sounding the alarm. And I played a soundbite at the beginning of the show from Illinois Congressperson Sean Casten from the House floor. And, man, I got to tell you, Sean Casten's pretty fired up, too. That's what we want. We want to see that.
So is Adam Schiff. I listened to him last night on the Senate floor. I think he's made for the Senate.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a compliment.
You were right, exactly. But he was able to, spin out quite an argument. He was followed by Amy Klobuchar, who's also really good. But yeah, the more of these folks you can get on your show and, give them a microphone for the Chicago audience, I think the better off we'll be.
Yeah. That's, what did you think when you heard about that call that the Democratic governors had with Chuck Schumer? My understanding is that one of the driving forces behind that call was J.B. Pritzker. For those of you who don't remember what I'm talking about, most of the Democratic governors, Jay Inslee from Washington, J.B. Pritzker, they requested a phone call with Chuck Schumer. And my understanding is that the message was basically, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because from where we're sitting, it doesn't look like you're doing anything.
And then what does Chuck do? He has a news conference, and he shows up with a beer and an avocado and says, if Mexican tariffs hit, you guys aren't going to be able to afford these things anymore. I mean, that's just silliness.
Well, it was something.
Just silliness.
I mean, come on, baby steps here, Michael. Baby steps.
Yeah, I suppose. But we need to get our act together, and we got to have someone who can throw punches and land them. Because we have no levers of power now. I mean, both houses, the Supreme Court, the presidency, all we've got are a handful of governors and Mitch McConnell.
One thing I wonder, and this is not really something either you nor I could really, really know, but obviously, we've got Alito and Clarence Thomas, who are, if at all possible, I think Trumpier than Trump. And a Supreme Court that is very, very, very partisan, very much in Donald Trump's debt. And I think he's planning on them rolling over and agreeing to all of his various things, whether or not we consider them illegal. When they get to the Supreme Court, I think he's expecting a rubber stamp. Now, you're the Supreme Court. Do you think of that as, I'll do anything I need to do to help my guy? Or do you realize, do you take a step back and see the bigger picture where he's basically neutering us? He is taking away our power and just assuming that we are going to fall in line.
Well, it depends on the judge. So, for a couple of them, like Alito and Thomas in particular, you look at their jurisprudence, and they're all very Scalia-esque. They all want, that Reagan idea of smaller government, less government, and part of that is the Supreme Court doing less, restraining the court, and so philosophically, they would be fine with that. You look at, people like Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, who Trump appointed. Maybe they have some of that psychological, bent that, hey, he's our guy because he put me on the bench. And, even at Trump's inauguration inside the Capitol Rotunda, you saw the justices there, and you saw at the lunch afterwards, Kavanaugh is sitting right next to Mark Zuckerberg. I have no idea what those two men have in common or what they talked about. I'm sure it was awkward. But Meta's going to have a case going up before the Supreme Court here probably this term. And there he is chatting with one of the people who's going to be deciding that case. And they're not even hiding it, Joan. They're not even hiding it. It's just out there, right? And so that belies a certain hubris, I think, that, we're in power and you don't need to question us. And then, of course, Zuckerberg, after the inauguration, says, I'm going to stop policing Facebook. I'm going to leave it up to you guys, to police each other. So, it's kind of a tip of the hat to the Trumpian DEI, anti-wokeness, anti-hate speech kind of thing.
Well, maybe Brett was trying to convince Mark that they should have a relationship like Harlan Crow does with Clarence. Like,
That's right.
I'd like a $250,000 RV, and I'd like you to pay off all my nieces and nephews' college and schooling. And why don't you buy my mom's house? That would be great.
Yeah.
Let's start there, Mark.
Yeah.
Why don't you... and you know what, Mark, if you could start including me on your private jet vacations, that would be awesome, too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that you mentioned those two. Both Clarence and Brett have been the ones making the rounds, doing all the swearing in for Trump's cabinet members. I don't know if you saw that. There was a great piece on CNN this morning that showed Thomas swearing in the new Secretary of Homeland Security in his living room in his house. She came to Clarence's house, and he's been, shuttling around, to all these other departments doing it there too. But they're sort of wrapping themselves in, the right-wing legitimacy of, of Thomas, because he carries a lot of cred for the MAGA crowd.
Yes, he does.
His wife is one of the MAGA ringleaders.
Oh my God!
So.
Clarence Thomas was at the swearing in of Pat Bondi. Did you see where Donald Trump couldn't remember Ginny Thomas's name?
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas is standing there beaming, and Pat Bondi is beaming, and Donald Trump was making remarks. He was like, thinking ready, and Clarence and his wonderful wife is here. Clarence's wonderful wife is somewhere in the background. Thank you for being here, like, Mrs. Thomas. And it was like, dear God in heaven, she was one of the people who helped you bring about January 6th, and you can't even remember Ginny?
Right. And that goes to his, how long is he going to be in this office? Is he going to make it to 82? I don't know. He seems
you know
little
what? That's something
off.
that I've been thinking about, too. And we need to take a break. I want to explore that little thought you just had.
Yeah,
I'm talking to law professor Michael Kelly. He's from Creighton University in Omaha. We're going to be right back after this.
There's no excuse to miss Joan Esposito.
It's number one on my stereo.
Live, local, and progressive. You can listen to her daily at WCPT820.com on your computer or phone.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Joining me is law professor Michael Kelly from Creighton University in Omaha. And we just started to touch on the idea of Donald Trump's age. We saw what happened to Joe Biden, an older gentleman, but who was completely on top of things and very spry over the course of 4 years. We've seen what happens to presidents, how they go gray, how they age. It's a very stressful job. At least it is if you do it right. Donald Trump is quite old. He's never taken care of himself. He's not known to have the best diet. He's certainly not in the best shape. And I think it's a real legitimate question as to whether or not he is going to last for the next 4 years. However, I will say, Michael, he's already started. Remember how in his first term he went golfing some 200 plus times? There is a website now where you can track his golfing.
I saw that.
Yeah, how many times he goes golfing. So maybe, he'll just throw a bomb once in a while and then spend a week on the golf course, and maybe he won't suffer the stress. But if something does happen to him, that begs the question, who is J.D. Vance, and what would a Vance presidency look like? And I would argue we don't really know, because remember, the J.D. Vance of not that many years ago thought that Donald Trump was a moron, thought he was a Nazi, and then realized that he had to change that tune if he was ever going to get anywhere. And so in the best tradition of Lindsey Graham, he saw which way the wind was blowing and decided to move in that direction. So I don't feel like we really know what a Vance presidency would look like. Have you given it any thought?
No, I haven't, but you're right. He's a chameleon. I don't know that we could nail him down to a particular ideology. I mean, he has these sort of knee-jerk reactions that, belie sort of an autocratic streak along the lines of Trump. One of the pieces of advice he was giving to Trump in the summer, this was a quote of his from the Wall Street Journal about the Supreme Court, is if you don't like their rulings, just don't enforce them. He quoted Andrew Jackson, who famously in the 1820s, when the Supreme Court was trying to enjoin him from pushing the Cherokee over to Oklahoma out of Arkansas, the Supreme Court has made its decision. Now let them enforce it. So he has these sort of autocratic tendencies that Trump has, and they come out at weird times. But I don't know what his philosophy is or his ideology is, and I don't even know.
I don't even think he has one.
If Trump's infirmity, gets to that point, I don't even know if we would get to Vance, because don't forget, Joan, we've got Musk. So, Trump has been given a full-time babysitter, and he's the richest man in the world. So if you saw them travel together, I don't know if you watched any of this, to Paris for the opening of Notre Dame. They went together, and Musk took Trump to his seat in the front row, and there was an empty seat next to it that the French president was going to arrive in. And then Musk walked about 10 rows back and just watched Trump as Macron came and sat next to him, and they did their thing. And then he picked up Trump afterwards, and they went outside and took a selfie down the street in front of the Eiffel Tower. So he's very much his handler. Is he just protecting his investment, or is it the power that he's after? I don't know, but it's disturbing on lots and lots of levels.
Famously, at the end of Reagan's second term, he was apparently quite evidently in dementia by that point.
Yeah.
And his aides protected him, limited access to him. I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't like he was going to run for re-election anyway. And they really did everything in their power to keep his infirmity secret. I can see the people around Trump doing the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think James Baker was kind of Reagan's handler there at the end. Musk is now seeming to take on that role. He has an office next door in the Eisenhower building where the vice president has his office. And Musk has taken over the Secretary of War suite in the Eisenhower building, which is this huge room with chandeliers and bookcases and everything. He was offered, apparently, an office in the West Wing, but he said it was too small.
What I read was that Trump left that Musk made a request for an office in the White House. Trump said, it's up to you, got to talk to Susie Wiles. She's in charge of all that. And I read the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and a number of places, so I can't remember who reported this, but they were the ones, she was the one who supposedly said, well, he's got these 20 people he's working with. It would be best if they were all together. So rather than giving him an office in the West Wing, we're going to give him this great big space over there in the Eisenhower building. And the story I read was reported as she was the one who said, no, I don't think you'll be in the West Wing. I think you'll be across the yard with the rest of your folks.
With the other boys. So maybe Susie Wiles is the one to watch, Joan. Do we know anything about her?
Well, here's what I know, and we're kind of running over time, but real quickly, she was a big Republican campaign manager until she started working with Ron DeSantis. And at first they had a great relationship, but it soured. And the way the Wall Street Journal reported it, he did everything in his power to not only stop working with her, but to ruin her reputation amongst all Republicans. He didn't want her ever hired again until Trump hired her. So there is she's got some interesting history, shall we say. I wish we had more time, Michael. There's so much more to talk about. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
Always a pleasure. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
If you've missed any of today's show, you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Amazon, or HeartlandSignal.com. Just search for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I want to remind you guys that we now do podcasts. If you are in the habit of going to SoundCloud, which we used to use to post our shows, all the old stuff is still there, but we have not been posting anything to SoundCloud for months now. We now have, I have this, and Patty has this. We now have our very own podcasts. You get them wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's like the TuneIn app or if there are actual dedicated podcast apps on your phone. That's what I have, a dedicated podcast app. Or, you can ask Alexa for it if you're really having a hard time. Our podcasts are also being put up on YouTube. And here's how you do it. You can look up Joan Esposito, full episodes, and it will be the entire show for a given day. You have to figure out if you were not able to listen to me last Tuesday and you want to know what we had to say, you would go to Joan Esposito full episodes and put in Tuesday's date, February 4th. But you can also go to Joan Esposito featured interviews. That's literally what you type into your search bar. Joan Esposito featured interviews podcast. And then you can actually see split off. Like, for instance, I just had a great conversation with law professor Michael Kelly. That is going to be up as its own podcast. It would be Joan Esposito featured interviews, and then you could type in Michael Kelly. Right now, some of my conversations that are easily gettable through your podcast app is I talked to Keith Edwards, he's a Democratic strategist, but he's also an influencer. He has nearly 1 million followers, and he's broadcasts across platforms. I talked to State Controller Susana Mendoza, Loyola professor Brian Endless. I talked to Joan Walsh, who writes for the Atlantic magazine. If there's a specific person whose interview you want to hear, then you can go to the podcast Joan Esposito featured interviews. The same exists for Patty as well. So I want to let you know that that is what is going on and where you can find us. We are now going to take a real quick break, and we're going to be back with more after this.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
You know, earlier today I was sharing with you some of the stuff from Illinois Congressman Chuy Garcia and Illinois Congressman Sean Casten, who've had a lot of really interesting things to say. I also want to share with you, they are not the only senators Congress people, including other Congress people from Illinois who are standing up and saying things. Look up some of the stuff that Raja Krishnamurthy has been talking about lately. And not just in Illinois. You know, Senator Cory Booker has been out there front and center. Yesterday, I played a soundbite from Illinois Congressman Jonathan Jackson. Democrats really seem to be waking up and taking action. And one of the people who's been keeping an eye on all of that is Michael Jones, who is the national politics correspondent and founder of the Once Upon a Hill newsletter. And his whole job is keeping an eye. Oh, wait a minute. We lost him. Oh, Lady B. She's calling him back. Michael, if you can hear my voice, we got disconnected. We have to call you back. Okay, well, then you know what? Well, as long as I have that opportunity, let me share some of that stuff that I was talking to you about people who have been coming out and protesting what is going on right now. Like I said, one of those people is our own Illinois Congressman, Raja Krishnamurthy. One of the things he talked about is eggs. Remember, we were going to vote in Trump because eggs were going to be cheaper. They were too expensive. Listen to Illinois Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy.
On the campaign trail, Donald Trump said on August 15th, 2024, grocery prices have skyrocketed. When I win, I will immediately bring down prices starting on day one. You don't dispute that, right?
That was a statement, yes.
Unfortunately, the price of groceries and eggs have only risen since Donald Trump took office. According to the USDA, the wholesale cost of a dozen eggs has increased from $6.59 on Inauguration Day until now it's $7.53, a 14% increase. Again, you don't dispute that, right?
No.
I assume you're not happy with this particular increase either, right?
Oh, I wish the bird flu wasn't around, but it is.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. According to PBS and Axios, some of the reasons for high grocery prices and high egg prices are avian flu and recalls related to salmonella and listeria. You don't dispute that, right?
Correct.
My staff went back and checked the hundreds of executive orders that have been issued by Donald Trump, and yet not a single one has mentioned the words avian flu. You don't dispute that, right?
As far as I know, that's correct.
And not one has mentioned shutting down salmonella, right?
I don't know if you can shut down a salmonella, but
or combating salmonella.
Again, if you
and
say
not one has mentioned listeria.
Again, if you say so.
Well, I don't see a single executive order that will do anything to address high grocery prices or egg prices. This hearing is about right-sizing the federal workforce. I think we should right-size the cost of eggs, Mr. Schatz.
Yeah, let's right-size the cost of eggs, shall we? In other words, people were complaining that the price of eggs were going up because of Joe Biden when there were other factors involved. Avian flu. And if you read any kind of regular media, bird flu, avian flu, H5N1, it's getting worse, not better. The price of eggs is going, you know what? Just get used to not eating eggs. And, try to find something else when you're baking to get your stuff to stick together. Because it's going to get much worse. We don't have a good way to stop this bird flu. I mean, when it gets into a herd or a flock, you can eliminate, you can, kill all your chickens. But that's not a real successful way to stop bird flu. And we don't really have much of a treatment available. For some of these things, if they do make the jump to people, we have problems with West Nile. There's no West Nile virus carried by mosquitoes. Sometimes all that medicine can do is try to support you, so that your body can eventually get rid of the illness. Senator Cory Booker was mentioned. Do you remember I told you about that call that all the Democratic governors did with Chuck Schumer? And they were like, you senators have to start being more vocal. Chuck Schumer told the governors that Cory Booker, who's very good at social media, was trying to teach the other Democrats, trying to teach the other Democratic senators how to do social media. Yeah. This is what TikTok is. This is what Facebook is. This is what Instagram is. Anywho, you know what? Better a late effort than no effort at all. Now, using those different platforms isn't going to do anybody any favors unless Democrats can come up with cohesive messages and everybody says the same thing or talks about the same issues. That's what Republicans do really well. Something happens that they don't like, something Democrats do usually, and immediately you have a minimum of 5 elected Republicans who are calling out that specific thing. Not, I'm really upset about this, and somebody else, I'm upset about that, and I'm upset about that other thing. And do you remember that thing from last week? That's what I'm upset about. That is not how you break through. Everybody has to be on the same page. What is it we're going to protest today? Donald Trump wrote another illegal executive order. Elon Musk is sending a 25-year-old over to Treasury to have access to your Social Security information and your tax returns. That's what we're going to be mad about today, and we're all going to talk about the same thing. That is when people pay attention. The old rule, tell them what you told them, tell them what you told them again. People don't always pay strict attention. But if they hear, that's what Donald Trump is good about. If they hear him say the same thing over and over and over again, they either believe it or they think that something about it must be true. Donald Trump told one of his former aides, it might have been Alicia Farah, who's now a commentator on CNN. She was in his comms department. It might have been her, but it was someone of her ilk. And that person was told by Donald Trump that if you tell people something over and over and over again, if you keep saying it, people will believe it, whether or not it's true. If you say it over and over and over again, people will believe it. And that's the lesson Republicans learned a long time ago. And I would love to see Democrats start doing it too. I told you one of the people who's been really prominent and really involved in a lot of the cabinet vetting and other things going on in the Democratic Party is New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. I want to share with you a little bit of what Cory Booker has had to say recently. Listen to this.
Understand this. There are legislators walking through here, but these are the ways we're going to fight. First of all, in the United States Senate, we will not cooperate. We are joining the leadership. We are joining the leadership already stated by Brian Schatz of Hawaii, that we will cooperate with no appointments when it comes to the State Department, no appointments when it comes to foreign policy. The first thing we're going to do in the Senate is not cooperate with the illegal and unconstitutional acts that they are trying to do. The second thing we are going to do, and we met this morning, it is in the legal perspective. The second thing we are going to do is we are going to fight this legally in every way we can. We will fight their violation of civil service laws. We will fight their violation of civil rights laws. We will fight their violations of separation of powers. We will fight their violations of our Constitution of the United States of America. We will not shut up. We will stand up. We will speak up. We will rise up. It is time, as the African spiritual says, for us to lift every voice in condemnation of what's going on.
Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Man, oh man, that is inspirational, in my humble opinion, and that is what we want right here, right now, from our Democratic leadership. Well, we'd like some leadership. That would be the first step. And then that leadership should gather everybody together and put together a plan. Hakeem Jeffries has done it in Congress. He wrote to every Democratic member of Congress and shared his 10-point plan for how we move forward. And don't forget, the last point of the 10-point plan was a mandate, an order, not a suggestion, not a hint, not if you feel like it or if you don't, but it was, you will, as a Democratic member of Congress, you will have a town hall in the next week. You will do this. These are your orders. This is not a suggestion. And he basically told them that they were going to pay attention and make sure that it happened. One of the other people who I've been telling you about for quite a while now is Senator Chris Murphy. He was really, from what I saw, he was the first. Now, maybe somebody else will say, well, you know, Cory Booker spoke out first. I must have missed that because 2 weeks ago, Chris Murphy was talking to the cable news network saying, where are the Democrats? What are they doing? What's the plan? How are we going to fight this? More than 2 weeks ago, he was saying that, sounding the alarm, a 5-alarm fire. And, you know, he continues to not only talk about what is going on with the Trump administration, all the illegal actions, all of the illegal executive orders, all of the efforts to get rid of every civil servant. You know, yesterday I told you, they asked the entire body of people in the CIA to retire. They asked them to voluntarily leave. They asked them to quit. And somebody at the CIA turned over to the Trump administration all the information about the last 2,000 people they've hired, I guess hoping that maybe if the Trump administration really is going to come for them, it would be, you know how they say, a last in, first out, that maybe those people would just be gotten rid of and not the ones who've been there longer. Somebody at the CIA turned over the information for the last 2,000 people who they've hired. One retired CIA administrator was interviewed on cable news, and he said that that was an intelligence breach of staggering proportions. So Chris Murphy, like I said, has been sounding the alarm and continues to sound the alarm. I shared with you a couple of weeks ago what he had to say. I'd like to share with you something that he said very recently, where he was telling his fellow Democrats that they need to actually oppose Donald Trump It's not enough to be quiet. It's not enough to, vote no on this, but yes on this. No, the Democrats have to learn how to be a true opposition party. What the Republican Party has been for so long, they do it like they breathe. They don't have to think about it. They know the playbook. They know when they get their marching orders. They know who to talk to and what to say. The Democrats need to look at the people on the other side of the aisle and learn a couple of things. Chris Murphy recently said that the Democrats need to act like they are an opposition party, because you know what? They are. Listen to Chris Murphy.
We need to act like a real opposition party in the middle of a constitutional and democracy crisis. That means we should not be moving forward nominees or legislation in the United States Senate. Democrats should not be giving votes to nominees or to legislation in the United States Senate until Republicans get serious about this crisis. Democrats should not help Republicans raise the debt ceiling in order to pass their massive tax cut for billionaires and millionaires. Democrats should be leading public gatherings all weekend, all across the country, to bring Americans out to show Republicans that they will pay a price. And then Democrats need to speak in really stark terms about what is going on here. Yes, we are obsessed with subtleties, but I don't think it's a mystery as to what is happening here. I think this is a billionaire power grab. I think Elon Musk is trying to steal our money, is trying to steal our data. I think Elon Musk is shutting down the USAID because he wants to do deals with China and make more money. And I know that there are some in the Democratic Party that, don't like jumping to conclusions, that there are some in the Democratic Party that don't like to call out specific billionaires for what they are doing to all of us. But this is a moment in which we've got to engage in very simple and strong terms about what is happening, side by side with being a true opposition party in the Senate, using our tools to make life difficult for complicit Republicans, and then going out there and leading a public engagement, which is, I think, the next step that we have to do. Don't just fight on the inside, go fight on the outside. So all of those things are vital. I don't know that all of my Democratic colleagues were there a week ago. I'm hoping that they are going to get there this week. I think many of them are.
Let's hope so. There is a move underway on Capitol Hill. Democrats have put together a bill where they are specifically going after Elon Musk and Doge. They are saying that, somebody who's unelected really shouldn't have access to all the Treasury data. And let me tell you something else. This is something Rachel Maddow pointed out. She said if the Doge endeavor, or Dodgy, as my listeners would prefer I called it, if that endeavor is working, why can't the White House just tell the truth about what it's doing? Instead, Republicans have publicly said that Elon Musk has found $50 million of taxpayer money that was being wasted. What was that $50 million being spent on? Condoms that were being sent to Gaza. That's a lie. We did not buy $50 million worth of condoms to send to Gaza. Okay? Even eventually the White House had to say, well, that's not really true. What else has the angry blonde woman claimed on Trump's behalf and Doge's behalf? Part of the reason why they're going after USAID, Soft Power, the agency that helps countries like us because we try to help their people who are sick and dying and starving. She claimed that USAID spent $70,000 on a production of a DEI musical in Ireland. They spent $47,000 on a transgender opera in Colombia and $32,000 on a transgender comic book in Peru. The angry blonde woman said these things publicly. None of those things are true. USAID has not spent any money on any of those things. Not any money on that DEI musical, that transgender opera, the transgender comic book. You know what USAID does spend money on? Medicines, vaccines, food. Because here's a funny thing. When a country's people need those things and you are the big gun in town who provides that kind of help, those countries think very highly of you. They are grateful to you. They are much more willing to listen to you when you want their governments to do something. This idea that somehow we are just wasting our money by sending it to foreign countries is wrong. There is a political benefit to us. We gain respect, we gain influence, we gain power. And oh, by the way, for all of you white Christian Trump supporters, aren't you supposed to be taking care of the sick? Or is it only like white sick people in the United States? If you're a sick person somewhere else, I guess Jesus doesn't count them? What? How does that work? We can let you starve as long as you're a black person in Africa? Jesus says that's okay? We don't want to give you any money because it's all for us. Us, us, us. Nobody but us. Is that what the Christians, the white Christians want? The white Christian nationalists, is that what they want? Don't send that money to them. Keep it here. So we can not spend it here on our public schools. We're not going to spend it here. So we can, oh, wait a minute. Did you just say you wanted to cut Head Start and you're not going to send the money for Meals on Wheels and you're going to cut Medicaid, which means people here in this country, poor people, are not going to have health care? Well, wait a minute. Isn't that what you're so mad about? Don't send that money to another country to help them out. Help Americans out. But then you don't want to do that either. The Republicans don't want to do that either. They are trying to gut social programs. But don't worry. Don't worry. Your guys have a use for all this money. They're going to make Elon Musk richer, Jeff Bezos richer, Peter Thiel richer, Mark Zuckerberg richer. And isn't that going to make your life better? We're going to take a break for news. We're going to be back with more after this.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live.
Celebrating our power to bring about change.
Local.
Everybody has to work together.
And progressive.
I think you get the idea.
On WCPT 820.
I have been sharing with you some of what we have been hearing in the last few days from senators and various Congress people. One of the people who has been spending their days on Capitol Hill watching what Congress does and says is Michael Jones. We've talked to him before. He's the national politics correspondent and founder of the Once Upon a Hill newsletter. All things Congress, all the time. And Michael joins us now. First of all, Michael, how are you doing?
You know, I am hanging in there, Tom. Thank you for asking. I really appreciate it.
Have you been covering the cabinet nominations?
I have, among all of the 1,000 other things that are happening on the Hill. Yeah, the cabinet nomination and confirmation fights have been a huge focal point right now.
What was it like being there? I mean, I appreciate the fact that after initially kind of being more pliable, Democrats have really started asking tough questions, and, that's been getting a lot of coverage. But the bottom line is that without some Republican cooperation, the worst of these people, as we've already seen with Pete Hegseth, the worst of these people are going to be confirmed. Do you have any belief that there are any Republicans who will oppose, say, Bobby Kennedy?
Not at this point. I think it's really extraordinary sitting here talking to you now, given where we were maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, where it looked like a RFK Jr., Robert, F. Kennedy Jr., a Tulsi Gabbard, who's Trump's pick for, the top intelligence person, the pick for FBI, Cass Patel, Pete Hegseth. Those four were viewed as among the most controversial and among the toughest to get through. But, they made it out of committee, all of them, but the FBI pick have made it out of committee, which, foreshadows them, being confirmed in the full Senate. And it's just been fascinating to watch how that evolution has taken place among the senators. I will say that a lot of it has been behind the scenes pressure from other senators, the Trump White House, but also public pressure, whether it's social media, phone calls to these senators that are basically saying, we're done with you if you don't confirm these nominees. We will primary you. We will fund your opponents. And a lot of that pressure is really, really, really hard to push back against when it comes to MAGA. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why you're seeing the fact that Donald Trump may get every single one of his cabinet level nominations confirmed by this new Republican majority Senate.
Michael, is it your sense that the pressure is coming from constituents, or it's been suggested to me that somebody like Elon Musk has been adding his name and saying, I've got all the money in the world, and if you thwart my buddy, I'm going to spend some of that money on a primary challenger and make sure you lose office. Because, for example, Joni Ernst, somebody who was elected, she was proud of how tough she was and how she could castrate farm animals, and she herself was a victim of sexual assault, and she was not a supporter of Pete Hegseth, at least not initially. And her vote could have prevented his nomination from moving out of the committee to the entire Senate. And she went from somebody who was being very careful in what she said, though clearly not in support of Pete Hegseth, to somebody who signed on and ended up voting for him. So was that Elon Musk threatening her with his millions? Was that, were the people of Iowa that invested in Pete Hegseth? What's your sense of it?
Yeah, a couple of things on that, Joan. First of all, I think it's just a sign of the times. I think, the MAGA movement is really just about making sure that President Trump, a lot of the MAGA right views Donald Trump's success as their success. And so if he wants someone like Pete Hegseth, then he gets to have him because I'm a Trump supporter, and Trump should get what he wants just because I voted for him. Even though the Constitution isn't set up that way, I think it's just a sign of the times and the influence of the MAGA right when it comes to a lot of this pressure on a lot of Republican lawmakers. The reality is, Joan, in this day and age, the threat of a primary from your right or from your left, depending on which side of the aisle you're on, is very real. The way that the electoral maps are set up each election, there just aren't that many competitive, toss-up seats. So really the only way you can get beat in a safe seat is by someone who is to your right if you're a Republican, or to your left if you're a Democrat. And that's what's happening, is that MAGA is saying, if you don't become MAGA, we will find someone who is MAGA and get them installed in these seats. And that's a huge, huge fear for a lot of these members. Joni Ernst, Tom Tillis, I mean, I could go down the list, Joan, of members who had deep, and I would dare say authentic, genuine concerns about several of these nominees. And on each one of them, the same cycle we saw went into action. Again, that public pressure, whether it's phone calls from the constituents, whether it's social media comments, whether it's emails. And then on the Elon Musk thing, for a lot of these members, they only have to hear the threat of Elon Musk funding a primary to get in line. It doesn't always take a phone call from him directly. Just the fact that he is in the position that he's in, with proximity to the West Wing, with an office on the White House campus, with all of this power that $280 million can buy, that alone, that threat is enough for a lot of these members to fall in line.
You spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill, and I know sometimes when legislators or their aides get comfortable and they see a reporter day in and day out, sometimes not only do you get the public pronouncements, but you get kind of the behind the scenes, well, this might be how we really feel, but we can't afford to do it for that. What are people saying to you privately?
I think people are saying what I just told you, that this is just the era that we're living in, that we're living in a moment where political survival kind of requires this kind of this fealty to Donald Trump. I, asked the number 3 House Democrat yesterday during his weekly press conferences, Pete Aguilar of California. I asked him yesterday because there's really a one-seat majority in the House. There's really a situation where, 2 or 3 Republicans joined all House Democrats. Some of this legislation coming out of the House, or some of the efforts that House Republicans are making to dismantle, Biden-era regulations, or aspects of the legislation that President Biden passed on the last time, it would only take 2 or 3 Republicans. And I asked, Pete Aguilar yesterday, have you all targeted those 3 Republicans? Do you believe that there are 3 Republicans who are willing to defy leadership, who are willing to defy Trump, who are willing to defy, their constituents in service of the Constitution? And, Pete Aguilar said that there used to be many more of them 10 years ago when he joined Congress, but there just aren't that many today. He believes there are some, and I do have conversations with Republican staffers and Republican members who say to themselves that their job is, no matter how they feel about Donald Trump, no matter how they feel about what he's doing, their job is to represent the will of their constituents. And if their constituents want what Donald Trump is serving, then it's their job to give it to their constituents. And sure, if that's what, if that's how a lot of folks reconcile their decisions, then, I take them at their word.
Wow. I'm speaking with Michael Jones, who's a national politics correspondent and founder of the newsletter Once Upon a Hill. And he is up there on Capitol Hill day in and day out. We are going to continue our discussion right after this.
Take Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, with you on the go by using the TuneIn app on your phone. Just search for WCPT 820.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Hey, listeners, are any of you looking to buy a house? Maybe you've got an 8% mortgage and you're looking to refinance. Well, if you are interested in doing that, also if you're a financial planner, a CPA, or a divorce attorney, listen up. You might be wondering why your mortgage professional hasn't been returning your calls. Well, 165,000 of them didn't renew their licenses in the last couple of years. It was a tough business to be in, and a lot of them left. Not Team Hochberg. As a matter of fact, they have been expanding. They've been adding loan officers. They're stronger than ever, and they'd love to have your business. They're who I use when I want to refinance. So if you would like to work with one of these experienced mortgage professionals, do what I did. Call Team Hochberg now, 855-563-2843, or go online, 56david.com. That number again, 855-563-2843 or 56david.com. Lower.com, equal housing lender, NMLS 1124061.
This is Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm talking to Michael Jones, who's a national politics correspondent and founded a newsletter called Once Upon a Hill. He reports on all of the things that are going on Capitol Hill, and we have been talking about whether or not there will be any bipartisan support pretty much on anything. But remember, March 14th, I believe, is the magic day where the government shuts down if there isn't a budget bill. And it has recently been occurring to some folks that, hey, we better start having these talks. And this is where I think it will be one of the only areas, Michael, where Democrats can really have an impact because Republicans really need them to do this whole budget process. Explain to the audience what is going to happen and how you think it's going to play out.
Yeah, so we're here again a few weeks away from another budget deadline. You know, we got here because the Congress keeps passing these short-term funding extensions that kind of kick the can down the road. And so March 14th, as Joan mentioned, you know, it's the next funding deadline. Something interesting happened this week, though. You know, there was this expectation coming into the new year that Democrats would do what Democrats have done, you know, the entire time that, at least in the House's case, they've been in the minority, you know, provide the votes, often the majority of the votes to keep the government open because Democrats understand how devastating government shutdowns are for everyday people. But given last week when the Trump budget office put out that memo freezing federal funding, given what Elon Musk is up to, in the Treasury Department. The top House Democrat, Hakeem Jeffries, put out a 10-point plan on Monday, Joan. And the first point was, this is Hakeem Jeffries speaking, I've made it clear to House Republican leadership that they will not be able to count on House Democratic votes as long as Elon Musk and the Trump budget office are trying to make these draconian cuts and access Americans' private information. We pressed Hakeem Jeffries earlier today over and over and over again, trying to get him to say on record, to commit, go further than that letter and answer a basic question. Will Democrats withhold votes if they believe that they have not gotten what they need to provide the American people assurances that programs that they rely on won't be cut and that Elon Musk won't be able to continue to run ramshot through the federal bureaucracy? Jeffrey said that all options are on the table, but Joan, in a lot of my conversations with rank and file members, Democrats want to use the two leverage points that they have, which is the budget that you just mentioned, the budget deadline coming up, and then something draconian that's a little wonky that I can come on and explain in another segment. But there's something called the debt limit that allows the government to borrow money to pay for federal programs that must be lifted probably sometime early summer. Republicans won't be able to do that without Democratic help either. So you've got a lot of rank and file Democrats who are fed up with, bipartisanship that only goes one way, and they want their leadership to use those 2 points of leverage to gain some concessions, even if it risks a government shutdown because there's a belief among these rank-and-file Democrats, and I've talked to dozens this week who believe that Republicans control the House, Senate, and White House, and it's their responsibility to fund the government. And if they can't fund the government on their own, if they need Democratic votes when they have a governing trifecta, it's going to have to come at a cost. And I think, it remains to be seen, but at this point, I do know that Democratic leaders are listening. I'm not sure when it push comes to shove if they'll apply that same hardball that the rank and file wants their leadership to play.
Interesting. I've talked before about how when Barack Obama was elected, Republican leadership met in a private room at one of the D.C. restaurants, and they plotted out how are we going to make sure this guy is a one-term president? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And they had a plan. One thing that it seems like Democrats are just waking up to is the idea that, hey, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we had a plan? Do you see them, frankly, to be blunt, getting their act together anytime soon?
I don't know. That's one of the, I have a header at the top of my notebook each day that says that it's called the Democratic Recovery Project. The Restoration Project, because that's really what Democrats are in the process of doing right now, is really finding themselves again and rebuilding their party and deciding who they're going to be going forward to deal with this strong MAGA movement. The thing that's interesting, Joan, when it comes to a plan is the fact that Democrats have so many coalitions that they have to address. There are the immigrant groups. There are, you've got the voters of color, whether it's, the black community or the Latino community. You've got women. You've got the LGBTQ community. You've got people with disabilities. You got all of these coalitions that are part of this big tent that we call the Democratic Party. And these different communities want different policy outcomes. They want a different posture, and it's interesting to see how Democratic leadership is handling all of these competing policy priorities. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I will say, I know that folks are angry and they're scared and they have a lot of emotions about what the Trump administration is doing. I do think that Democrats understand that they are at a moment where they need to step up and fight just to show voters and weary Americans that there is an opposition party. I think that behind the scenes, Democrats are still trying to figure out what the nuts and bolts, what the strategy looks like. I will say that they've coalesced around these three kind of buckets. So the three buckets that you'll hear Leader Jeffries or Leader Schumer talk about is there's this litigation bucket where Democrats and their lawyers are challenging all of these unconstitutional executive orders. That's the first thing that they're doing is they're taking all of these executive orders that they believe to be unlawful, they're taking them to court. And we've seen early on that, federal judges, even those appointed by Reagan, are striking down these executive orders as unconstitutional. Then there's a legislative strategy. Today, House Democratic leadership, they introduced a bill that would protect taxpayer data from what Elon Musk is doing in the Treasury Department, accessing that private data without Americans' permission. Democrats put forward a bill today, Joan, that would block that. So that's the litigation strategy that they're talking about. And then they say that that third prong is a mobilization strategy. Getting out into the streets, protesting, making noise, basically raising hell, so to speak. Yeah. And so those are the three parts of the strategy. What I think what Democrats are looking for consensus around is what are the tactics, what are the best tactics within that strategy. I think that there is broad agreement that that's the way to go. Attack it in the courts, attack it, through legislation, attack it in the streets. What are the different ways to attack it, or what are the best ways, I should say? That's the conversation that a lot of folks are having behind the scenes, and that's why a lot of folks are so frustrated because they're like, just figure it out as you go. Just try tactics, and if they work, keep doing it. And if they don't, pivot to something else. But at some point, we've got to stop talking about it and start being about it. And that's a conversation that I've tried to relay to members as I've been having, these chats about where do Democrats go from here.
This midterm election, there are going to be more Republican senators up to defend their seats than we saw last time, where we had a bunch of Democratic senators that had to try to hang on to their seats. Is your sense that because there are Republicans, more of them, who are going to be running for re-election, that maybe, you were talking about, were there going to be any Republican votes for anything the Democrats wanted to achieve? Do you think that will have an influence?
I don't. If you look at the map, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer for your listeners, but if you look at the map, a lot of these Republican seats are in deep red states. They're in states that, if the seat changes, it'll be another Republican, probably more conservative than the incumbent, taking the incumbent's place. Really, if you look at the map, there are really only 2 competitive Republican-held seats, and I don't even know if they're competitive yet. We've got to see what. And I'm talking about North Carolina and Maine. Susan Collins in Maine, Tom Tillis in North Carolina. Those are two seats that Democrats will target. Those are really the most vulnerable of the Republicans who are going to be up in 2026. Another complication for Democrats, Joan, is Gary Peters in Michigan, the senator in Michigan, surprised a lot of Democrats last week by announcing he's not running for re-election. Michigan is one of the 7 swing states that Kamala Harris lost. And it's still a battleground up and down the ballot. And so that's a seat that now Democrats will have to pour resources into to defend and keep that seat blue. And so that's another, thing that Democrats will be thinking about. It's a really, really, really hard Senate map as we sit here right now, Joan. It's the House where Democrats are saying, we've got our site. We all we need to do is pick up 3 or 4 seats. We were Democrats contend, Joan, that we would be talking about a Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries, had the North Carolina Supreme Court not upheld a partisan gerrymander that gave North Carolina 3 Republican seats that should have, in Democrats' eyes, gone to Democrats. And if that were the case, then we would be looking at a completely different outcome in 2024. So they have a lot more optimism than their Senate colleagues.
Well, Michael, I trust you to keep an eye on things and to keep us up to date. Michael is the founder of the Once Upon a Hill newsletter. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to being on again soon, Joan.
Oh, yeah. You can count on it. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am so happy to welcome back to our program the man you know and follow on social media as Brooklyn Dad Defiant. Majid Padellin is back here. He's also the author, most recently, of The Littlest President, which is a very interesting book about Donald Trump. Oh, Majid, how are you?
I am great, Joan. All things considered, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back on the show.
Thanks for being here. And like me, you have made the move over to Blue Sky. I actually, anybody who looks at my profile, I actually created a Blue Sky account when Blue Sky was still private and you had to have an invitation. And I didn't do much with it, but for the thousands of people who followed me on that old account, I have to apologize. I lost all the passwords. I lost all the access to it. I can't figure out how to get back into it. So I had to create a new Blue Sky account. So I'm starting from scratch again on Blue Sky because, I took my eye off the ball. So, yes, I can be found on Blue Sky. Just look up my name and you will find me there. But Brooklyn Dad Defiant has made that move without making the same mistakes that I did. And you can find him there with many, many, many followers. And I know that you have been one of the people speaking truth to power for so long. And I really admire the fact that you don't seem to have wavered in your fight.
You can't waver, Joan. You gotta stay in the fight. You have to be hopeful because what's the opposite of hope? It's despair. And I don't live in that universe of despair. I live in that universe of defiance. That's where that's where I got my nickname, or I actually named myself Brooklyn Dad Defiant. And originally I was Brooklyn Dad for Hillary. Fun fact, back in 2016. And the disappointment of the 2016 election caused many of my fellow Twitter users and resistors. It caused a lot of us to, the people in the messaging rooms were like, well, I guess I'm going to pack it up because, those trolls are going to come after me. And that infuriated me. I was like, how dare you? What are you talking about? This is when we need you the most, and you're just going to walk away? You're going to go hide your tail? No. And so that day I changed my name from Brooklyn Dad for Hillary to Brooklyn Dad Defiant. It wasn't, that's the thing. People think I'm defying Trump or defying the man or the powers that be. I was defying the defeatism. I was defying the despair. That's what the Defiant and Brooklyn Dad Defiant stands for. So, the last time I spoke to you on your show, on your wonderful show, I was promoting my latest book, which was The Bigliest Loser.
Yes, I remember. I have that around here somewhere. I have my copy of Littlest President right here, and I have Bigliest Loser somewhere in my library, which is a little bit overstuffed with books.
Yeah, so that one, I took a bath on that one. I completely, I had pushed all of my chips into Kamala Harris's corner, right? I bet the farm that she was going to win. I was 100% sure. So naturally, when this election day rolled around, it took all the wind out of me. And like many Americans, I was just, oh boy, it was like a punch to the gut,
It was. It was.
And the move to Blue Sky, I think, for a lot of liberals and progressive, I think was therapeutic. I think it was needed because at the time there were a ton of trolls on Twitter and Elon fans and Trump fans that were like, ha, ha, ha. And they're still doing that, even though there's a lot of chaos going on in the Trump White House right now. They're trying to play everything as though it's some kind of win for Trump.
Well, even today, the angry blonde woman who is his spokesperson, the judge stopped their move to say you're a federal employee if you don't take a buyout by Friday. Ooh, we're coming for you. And a judge said, no, that Friday deadline is going to be extended. And the angry blonde woman came out and said, oh, we're so glad that the courts are giving more people time to take advantage of this great offer. Well, I guess that's what you want from your press spokesperson.
Yeah. She's like Kayleigh McEnany 2.0. I mean, the thing with Kayleigh McEnany, you could tell when she was flustered. You could tell when she was you could almost tell when she was embarrassed because her face would kind of flush. But this one is shameless. Her Caroline Leavitt, she's shameless in her deceit. She will look. She's just as bad as Donald Trump. Or
she's like a Kellyanne Conway. She has no shame.
There it is. That's it in a nutshell. Absolutely. So yeah. As far as Blue Sky is concerned, I thought it was necessary for us to have our own little silo or whatever for us to lick our wounds. But I'm still on Twitter. I'm still there. I'm still fighting the good fight.
I gave up. I closed out.
Here's the problem with that, though, right? If we were all to leave, so now they have that if we abdicate, if we just leave that to them, then they now own that very valuable town square. It's not like people are going to stop tuning into Twitter just because we've decided to leave. They're still going to go there. And that means that they control the narrative 100%. There's nobody pushing back on their lies. At least now, there's some of us that are still fighting to push back on their false narrative, and I'm not going to give up. So I'm in both. I have one foot in both worlds, and it's not pleasant. Trust me.
You're very brave. You're very brave to do that. I can't. And you said something that I wanted to talk about. You were talking about how it was so difficult. When it was like a body blow when Kamala lost. I will tell you, it was just breathtaking. But you said that you saw a lot of gloating from the Trump folks. Here at this radio station, in addition to going out over the radio and talking to people like you, Majid, we also have a dedicated text line. So listeners can text me while I'm on the air. They can text all of our hosts. And I found something very strange. I didn't get that many Trump trolls before the election, but I got a lot of them after the election. And they were so angry. They were to a person. And I was writing a text response. And sometimes I even said on the air, dudes, you won. This is when you're supposed to be happy. And they were texting in and they were angry and I could tell they were yelling and I was like, please, this is the time. Let me give you a little bit of advice. This is the time when you're supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be walking around going, yay, we won. And they were uniformly the angriest, most vicious texts I have ever seen. And I thought, and it made me realize that I think anger is core to that constituency. They can't stop being angry even when they win.
Yeah, they are addicted to. They're addicted to victimhood. They're addicted to outrage. I don't think they know another gear. They were the same way all throughout Trump's first term. Angry. I don't know what are you angry for? Aren't you winning?
Yes.
Aren't you in that phase where Trump said we're gonna win so much you're gonna be tired of all the winning? Mm-hmm. And they didn't take time to enjoy the winning. They just went right back to I'm mad.
And
and I guess they were mad because really Trump was all smoke and mirrors. He's promised everything and delivered nothing.
Exactly. And you and I, we remember what he was like before, and we know to expect that. And I'm so tired. Every day it seems like I see another quote. Well, I didn't think he'd do that. He said he wasn't going to come after us. And I'm like, Stephen Colbert, I said this quote at the beginning of the show. I guess this week on one of his shows, he was like, people forgot, they didn't remember how much they didn't like Trump last time. They're starting to remember now. A lot of good that does us. Huh. You know, our Saturday host, Edwin Eisendrath, was talking to Tom Nichols, who writes for The Atlantic. And Tom, even before the election, like I said, I think anger is core. And I think the Republican Party fuels particularly white male anger. And Tom Nichols said, you know, that he was talking to a friend he's known since high school. So they've known each other long enough to have really blunt conversations. And he said this friend has had a successful career, owns his home, put 2 kids through college, owns a boat, and they were sitting talking, and his friend was telling him how angry he was that he really didn't get all of the, you know, that his piece of the pie was smaller than it should have been, and how he's angry that his life wasn't better, and that, you know, more stuff didn't come his way. And Tom said to Edwin that he looked at his friend and said, "So did you come to that conclusion when you were out on your boat? You know, is that when it came to you that, you know, you really haven't gotten your fair share of the pie?" I think white male anger is fueling a lot of Donald Trump's success.
Yeah, and I don't get it, because it's not like I understood during the past 4 years that inflation was bad. Inflation was, you know, there was no illusion around that. Inflation was not good. But the economy, for some reason, was doing well, was doing very well. You know, there were jobs, there were 16 million jobs either recovered or created during that time. Wage growth was outpacing inflation. And the stock market was going gangbusters. And I'm speaking as somebody who doesn't own a single stock. I'm not proud of it. It just is what it is. That's how my life. That's the path that my life took. I don't own any stocks. I wish I did, but I'm happy for the people who are seeing some growth in their 401ks and stuff like that. That's tremendous, because, you know, if other people succeed in our country, that means that overall the rest of us are going to succeed. So I was happy for that. But they didn't bother to acknowledge all the great things that were happening during the Biden administration. Like Joe Biden, say what you will about Joe's age. That was all they had on him, was like, Joe's old. But, you know, for an old guy, he got a lot of stuff done. You know, he passed that infrastructure bill a massive infrastructure package that every Republican voted against, but once it passed, they were all trying to take credit for. You know, and it's going to keep paying dividends over the next decade. You know?
Yes, it will. And Donald Trump will take credit for all of it as it unfolds. Yeah, just
Absolutely.
like the Republicans who voted against the infrastructure bill went to their districts and bragged about, well, that new bridge, you better keep me in Congress, baby. Oh, wait, you voted against it? Oh, I'm sorry. We need to take a break. I'm speaking to Majid Padelan, and you will find him on social media, Brooklyn Dad Defiant, as are we all right now. We'll be back with more after this.
Podcasts of Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Amazon. Just search for Joan Esposito.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
And I am happily joined by social media influencer Brooklyn Dad Defiant. You can find him on Blue Sky. You can search for Brooklyn Dad Defiant and it pops up. You can also find him at mmpedalan.bluesky.social. He's just starting to get attract some followers on Blue Sky. I think he only has like 500,000 so far. So, anything I can do to promote that paltry list of followers, I'm on board for. Whether or not you want to read his book, The Bigliest Loser, and might make you cry, go back to his first book, The Littlest President, where he reminds us what having Donald Trump in the White House is like. Hey, Majid, did you see? I just saw it announced today. Laura Trump is going to be a new Fox host. Yeah. Apparently Ron DeSantis decided that he did not want to give her the Florida Senate seat that apparently she had really had her eye on. But now she's going to be a Fox News host. Yay, us!
I thought she was already, actually, but. I mean, but they all kind of are, if you think about it. You know, the amount of time that Don Jr. spends there, and Eric, you know, they're all part of that same ecosystem. So, I mean, speaking of ecosystem, going forward over the next 4 years, that is where Democrats, I think, are going to need to up their game. And when I say that, I mean we are in a battle for information right now, an information war. And the people on the right, the Republicans, you can't even call them Republicans anymore because they're more like MAGA Republicans. They're just MAGA. There's not one person who, you know, our parents used to call Republican, who acts like a Republican. They don't seem to care about, you know, national defense anymore because they let a guy like Pete Hegseth head the Pentagon, you know, and I'm battling out there with trolls, and I'm like, dude, you know, forget that I'm a Democrat, you know, just, you know, consider the fact that I'm an American, and I would happily vote for a Republican to head the Pentagon if they weren't a raging drunk woman abuser, you know, a guy who was qualified, somebody who has led more than 200 people because the Pentagon has 3 million people that they're going to have to be in charge of. You know, give us somebody who's qualified. I'm not complaining about Marco Rubio. You know, would I prefer someone who wasn't like Marco Rubio? Sure. But at the end of the day, you know, he's a United States senator, you know. But you'd expect some more pushback from United States senators with candidates like Tulsi Gabbard or RFK Jr. or Kash Patel. You know, these are like fringe crazies that have no business being in cabinet positions. So anyway, get back to the it's an information war that we are not winning. You know, the misinformation and the disinformation is turned up to 11, and Democrats have to make more of an investment in creating the same kind of information ecosystem that will enable us to get our message out there, because the message is not getting out there. It's not. Whatever message it was that we were trying to, whatever message we were trying to get out there to win the day, to win that election, it failed. We were beaten to the punch, and so that's where I am right now.
With all of the protests that have been happening this week, it seems that the Democrats on Capitol Hill who were looking for some sort of motivation or passion have finally found it. But one thing that Republicans have always been good at is saying, okay, this happened today. This is what we're talking about. And everybody, you know, every Republican is, well, you know, did you hear about this? It's terrible. And you hear it over and over again, and it sinks in. Sometimes I think Democrats, you know, they sort of all go off and they talk about their own issue or their own thing, and they lack that cohesive message. Do you think they will be able to be more organized going forward, or is that a pipe dream? You know, Democrats have been, it's always been said that trying to get them to move in the same direction is like herding cats. Can we move past that, Majid?
We've had moments. We've had our moments when we were all kind of on the same page, and I can point specifically to one moment in the past 6 months where we were, and we did all coalesce, consolidate behind Kamala Harris, and it was amazing. It was an amazing thing to see because she only had a little over 100 days to get her stuff in gear, and with a mere 100 days, she almost did it. Donald Trump doesn't have a mandate. He won by 1 percentage point. That's it. That's not a mandate. A mandate means it's an overwhelming victory. He won a squeaker. He didn't even get 50% of the vote, you know? So we did all coalesce behind Kamala Harris back then, and we managed to keep our messaging tight as far as, like, we all agreed to start calling them weird. that held up for a while. But more message discipline, I think, more support of content creators, those of us like myself, who are out there, whether we're on social media platforms like Twitter or Blue Sky. I actually have a Substack. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Substack. That's where the writers go to. I am.
I follow. There's a couple of. One of our hosts is on Substack, and a couple of people who join me to talk about the media are on Substack. What's your Substack called?
It's Brooklyn Dad Defiant.
Well, there's a good name for it. Excellent. Excellent labeling. Oh, Majid, I've got to book you for more time next time. I'm at the end of my show here. I don't know how this happened. We just started talking a minute ago, and now all of a sudden it's over. Brooklyn Dad Defiant, you can find him on multiple platforms. If you are still on the bad one, you can find him there too. He's a wonderful man, and he has wonderful insights. And order his book, The Littlest President. It will make you smile. That's going to do it for me. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez is next. Of course, Richard Chu will be here tomorrow at 6 a.m. Oh, my God, tomorrow's Friday. We lived through another week. I will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Get your dialing finger ready because, we spend the first half of every Friday talking about news and taking your calls. Have a great night, my friends. See you tomorrow.